hear you perfectly well. Can you hear me?
I can hear you perfectly well, Matt. Thank you. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Well, I don't know if this is going to stream live onto Facebook, but if it doesn't, I'm recording this, so
Okay. Have you
it's
pressed the
recording.
stream?
So
Yes, it told me it was recording. Have you
it's
streamed it
so
on Facebook?
not done this before, and everything just did not work to plan this morning.
Oh, well. That's another day, another normal day for us all then.
Exactly. So we're both here. Well, thank you so much for doing this.
Fine. Lovely.
Right. So let me introduce you to everybody who's going to see this. Steve is an artistic illuminator who handicrafts unique lighting solutions. These are predominantly industrial style lamps constructed from galvanized iron and brass pipe fittings. His creations are nearly always art and character led, and many are client commissions, providing bespoke, one of a kind gifts for special birthdays, anniversaries, weddings, etc. Steve started creating quirky lighting in 2017 and soon discovered that the galvanized iron pipe fittings he remembered from his youth were still available. So, with a growing trend for industrial and steampunk style decor, he embarked on designing and making his own selection of character pipe lamps, despite the limited range of sizes and angles available with pipe fittings. Steve still tries to convey movement in the particular character he is creating. Sounds fabulous.
That sums it up perfectly. I
No,
couldn't have written it better myself.
totally. Okie dokie. So let's get into these questions.
Yeah,
And I'm looking down and not ignoring you. It's just that
that's
I'm
okay. That's fine.
So, what are you working on at present?
Well, at present, of course, we're moving house, so my workshop is all packed away, but that doesn't mean that I'm not creating. In fact, what I'm working on is a commission piece that I received at the last show that I did, which was the Contemporary Arts Fair. Because I do a lot of commission work for people. People often want a lamp made that's special to them. Maybe it's a favorite hobby they've got, or maybe it's a sport that their father played. But this is a chap came to see me who's really into the Beatles. He loves the Beatles. He saw the other lamps that I made in a similar vein, like you see Jimi Hendrix over my shoulder there on the backdrop here. And he said, would I consider doing one of the most iconic album covers ever?
Oh, wow. Yes.
Is the Abbey Road Beatles, the Fab Four. So that is what I'm working on at the moment in its early design stage. So that's good. I mean, it's not too difficult, but it's the size of it, because all my lamps are about 30 centimeters tall. And I said to him, would you like me to scale this down a bit? It's because I use 1/2-inch pipe fittings. And I said I could scale. No, he said, I want it full round. So it's going to be over a meter long, this piece.
Oh, how exciting. What a lovely commission.
That's what I'm working on at the moment. That's what I'm working on.
Okay, apart from commissions, I mean, you've said where this particular idea sparked from was this commission. Is there anything else that has helped you to create the piece that you're going to make for this particular?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, with all my pieces, I do an element of research because, as you said in the introduction there, Mac, I'm dealing with very inanimate objects, really, pipe fittings. They're sort of static objects. They've got no inherent movement in them, but it's the way that I put them together and just a slight variation in the degrees of the fittings when they're together hopefully conveys some sort of movement. So I've obviously, with this piece I'm doing here, I've got to convey the movement of them walking across. So it's not going to be that I do try when I've got a piece to work towards that's a photograph like this is, I do try to match exactly the sort of angles of the legs. So they're not all going to be just V-shaped legs like that. There'll be proper knee, because I've got special fittings that I use for knees. So they'll be a slight different angle. So I'll go so far as to almost measure the angle between like Paul McCartney's legs there to make sure I've got it right. That is what I love doing, because if you're trying to reproduce something and you've only got pipe fittings, it's a bit of a job. But by sort of trying to get that extra little bit of difference in, so that's what I'm going for, first of all. And of course, different coloured outfits they have on. John Lennon in white, Ringo Starr in black, Paul in a dark blue suit, and George in denim. The lamp will be, each lamp will be painted to match that. And Paul, of course, has no shoes on, so he'll have sort of pinky coloured fittings for the feet. And if you notice, he's the only one that's got a cigarette in his mouth, in his hand.
Ah.
So I will craft out of wood a little cigarette that I will put in his hand there. So it's just little things like that. So for all my lamps, there's lots of research that goes in. It may be just the golfing lamp that I did, getting the angle right of the swing, things like that.
Right. You've mentioned, do you always do research before you make a piece?
To some degree, yes. I mean, some of my pieces, most of the pieces that I do now are based on characters that I can research. But if I'm doing a sort of, there's a piece that I've done, it's not behind me, called Together Forever, which is two interlinked people, pipe people, with a big heart bulb between them. There's no research I could do for that. So that was sort of from my own mind, really, how to make this lamp look like two people, two separate entities, but with one heart combined. So if I'm doing more of an abstract lamp like that, I will do some notes and do some drawings. But if it's a sporting lamp or a musical lamp, it's very important to do the research to get the exact the positions, the stance, whatever. But on the whole, I like to do as much research as I can. Sometimes it's just not possible. But yeah, that's part of the enjoyment of the whole process.
Absolutely. And I like that you've got that flexibility and how you create. So you've described some of your decision-making process so far. Can you highlight any other decision-making?
Yeah, there's lots of decisions. Yeah, there are lots of decisions I have to make when I'm doing a lamp. The first one is, of course, size. Is it going to be feasible to do it the size that I want, which is nearly always using half-inch fittings as my base, which gives you a lamp, if you're doing a person, gives you a lamp about 30 centimeters tall. And it's also the choice of switch. Now, when I started in the early days, I used physical switches, as in the rotary switch or the torpedo switch, maybe in the cord, or a push button switch.
So you need to explain these switches to me.
Okay, well, obviously every lamp needs a switch to turn it on and off. The physical switches are the ones that you have to actually either turn, if it's a rotary click switch, or a push button on-off switch, which is a locking on-off switch, or it could be the torpedo switch, the one you find on a table lamp on the cord, the little back. So that's what I used to use at the start. That was my switching options. But then I got into making my lamps touch sensor. So you can touch anywhere on the lamp to turn it on. And that gives me a whole new way of thinking, because if you're trying to include a switch somewhere in the lamp, it has to be discreet. So the switches were on the end of someone's hand, maybe, or on the wooden base. With the touch sensor lamps, you don't have to see a switch. The switch is the whole lamp, and you are in fact part of the switch, because you touching the lamp creates the completed circuit and turns the lamp on and off. So it's sort of sorting out the switching. Now, with this lamp that I'm doing for the Fab Four, the gentleman who's commissioned it wants each of these lamps independently touch sensor switched.
Oh, that's a challenge in itself.
White. So he may one day just want George on and Ringo, or he might want Paul and John on one day, depending how he's feeling. So there's a whole new thought process got to go into there, because I can only do that when the lamp is on a wooden base,
Of course.
because you have to route out underneath the wooden base a space about ½ inch deep in which to put the touch sensor module, which is only a little plastic piece like that with the wires. But I've got to find space for 4 of those. And then I've got to wire them all up so that they all work off the same electrical input, the same 230-volt input, but then they've each got to be wired separately. So it's going to be a little bit like spaghetti junction, the wiring underneath. But it's, as long as you've got a clear head when you do the wiring, it's okay. You're just following the normal rules of electrical wiring. But so that is the consideration. And the other considerations, of course, the bulbs that I use, and that's always a vital part of the decision-making process with my lamps, is people don't do it, they don't give enough thought to the color temperature of the lamps that they're using, because all lamps have got a color temperature. Now, the normal lamps that you have on in your house will have probably a color temperature of, I don't know, 4,000 to 5,000 kelvins. So you got a nice sort of glow, and that's good lighting. If you want to have a light that really stimulates you and helps you concentrate more towards sunlight, you have to go for a brighter, whiter light, which has got a higher color temperature. So lighting has a big effect on your health, both mental and physical health. And in fact, I'm going to be writing a little article about that soon, about lighting and mental health. But that's also an issue when I'm thinking my lamps. I try and find out from the customer, is this lamp going to be a bedroom lamp? Is it going to go on the side of your bed? You don't want a bright 6,000 Kelvin. Or is it going to be in your office, where maybe you do want a brighter light because you want to concentrate when you're working at your computer? So that's a thought as well. So there's all these little, and then of course within those lighting options, there are different sizes of bulbs, different shapes of bulbs. So it's trying to match them all in so that the end result is a lamp that gives the customer what they need in the form of form and function, but also goes a little bit further in giving them the lighting that's going to make them feel good, them feel better in the environment in which they're going to have it.
That sounds absolutely fab. So you're actually creating a lamp and the light source for a particular, whether it's stimulating or relaxing, depending on which room and how they want to use that lamp. That is amazing. Now, what is your favorite artwork by another artist?
Oh, I thought long and hard about this, and this is going to sound almost like a bit of a cop-out. I mean, I love all sorts of art, and since I got involved with the Bloomz, my appreciation of art in all its different forms has grown immensely. To include abstract art, to include watercolors and sculptural art. But I'm going to choose a piece that actually my partner Steph did, because whenever anybody asks me, what do, you and Steph do, I show them my lamps. But there's always one piece that I show on my phone that Steph has done. And it's a piece, it's a Jack Russell dog that she did called Milo. Now, Steph is a fiber sculptor. So what she makes is 3D creations of animals, sometimes people's heads, and often people's pets. Maybe the pet has passed away, and they'll send her photographs, maybe a video clip, and she will reproduce out of wool and other fibers that animal in a position that the customer. And she produced this piece, Milo the Jack Russell. And it was one of those times when you see it and it took my breath away, because it just was incredible. And the customer, when her client saw it at the show that we took it to, and he wasn't even finished, the customer burst into tears because it was so lifelike. And that remains the favorite piece of art that I've seen anybody ever do, because of what it meant to the customer. And the reaction that I got when I saw it, and I still get that reaction now when I see it, when I look at it on my phone, I have to convince myself it's not the real dog. So, yeah, that's my favorite piece of art. So,
oh, wonderful.
go on to
Wonderful.
Stephanie Lester artist's website or Instagram or Facebook and find this Jack Russell, this brown and white Jack Russell, and you'll be amazed that it isn't the real dog.
You'll be amazed. Well, when this eventually goes on Facebook, because apparently I've been getting messages, Steve, but I'm not going to interrupt the recording. I'll just post later and explain, yeah, technology and me not quite understanding how to do it.
Get there eventually.
Yeah, we'll get there eventually. So once it goes in, if you could pop in Stephanie's link as well, so that people can see Jack Russell. And you've explained why. Now, what feelings arise when you are creating?
Well, when I'm creating, it's always going to be in my workshop. And I'm changing my workshop now because I'm moving. So there'll be a new workshop, which is such an exciting prospect. But I could be working in a small area, or it doesn't really matter. The fact that I'm in there, the fact that I'm creating, I suppose the first feeling I get when I go into the workshop is a sense of belonging. This is where I belong. This is what I should be doing. And I've done other jobs over the years and always enjoyed what I did. Enjoyed horticulture for 45 years. I was in horticulture. But it's funny because whenever I go in the workshop now to start creating a piece, the first feeling I get is that feeling of belonging. This is where I belong. And I think the joy then starts because you've got that feeling, you're in the right place. And because I've got another business as well, which is a small publishing business, which is very much computer-based, to be able to use the other side of the brain and do something creative is just wonderful. So it makes me feel, it lifts me up. It doesn't matter if I'm finishing a piece, starting a piece, the piece has gone wrong and I have to try and find a way of getting it right. I still get that feeling of this is what I need to be doing. This is where I belong. So belonging it's an odd feeling to get, isn't it? But
it's very important to feel that you
very
belong.
important.
Yeah. Home and belonging, that's the kind of I just kept feeling home. You're home.
Yes.
You're home where you feel you're around. Well, okay, what do you do when you're undecided when creating a piece about what to do next? What do you do?
The three things I do, I think the first thing is listen to some music, listen to a piece of music, depending how I'm feeling. The next thing is probably have a gin and tonic. And if all else fails, I usually ask Steph if there's something that I think isn't right. Because sometimes when you're creating a piece and you think you've got it right, but you feel as though you've got to go and validate that by asking somebody else.
Yeah.
So many times I've done that and I should know by now that means it's not right. There's something not quite right. And I'll go into the Steph's studio and I'll say, I've done this now. What do you think? And the fact that I've gone to ask her, she knows that deep down I know it's not quite right, or it needs something else, or it needs something changing. And because we are very good at giving each other constructive criticism, I don't mind when she said, well, that leg's not right on that. That's not quite right. You need to change that. And our reaction is normally a little bit defensive. Well, I think it's okay. And you know that it's not. And so this is the sort of the game that we play almost. You don't like to feel as though you can't quite think what you need to do. So you go and ask somebody else, and then you decide, well, no, they're wrong. It's actually quite fine. Then you look at it and you think, she's right. That leg isn't quite right, or that arm's at the wrong angle. And I think part of the time it's because it means a bit of work in undoing everything, repositioning something. And the thing with pipe fittings is you've only got a limited degree of thread on there. And sometimes you have to put it into the vise and you have to be hitting it with a hammer and really sort of pushing it. And you start thinking, I wish I'd left it as it was. But in your heart of hearts, it wasn't quite right.
No.
So thankfully, those moments of indecision don't come very often, Mac. But when they do, Steph's
Good.
here.
Steph's here. And if people haven't worked it out so far, you and Steph are partners.
Oh, we're partners. Yes, yes, yes. We
So,
spend time together 24/7, which is doesn't work for some people. I must
no.
admit, some people would struggle with that. But we actually, during lockdown, it didn't matter to us the fact that we were here all the time, because we're here all the time anyway. We have our own spaces. She has her own office. I have my own office. We have our own workspace, but we're always around each other. And that's good because we're both creative. It works. She can ask me about her pieces. I can ask her. I think we're very lucky in that respect, is that we do have each other to give that, to bounce off, really, bounce ideas off. And one thing we don't do is argue. And if we do have a disagreement, it lasts a second or two. This is the thing, that we're too old and to have long-standing disagreements and arguments doesn't work for us.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. Have you ever left an artwork unfinished?
Only when I've reached the stage where I'm having a problem, a logistical problem maybe, and I'm going to go back to it. But it's never that long before I go back to it, because often it's a piece that I need to get finished for whatever reason. Maybe it's for a customer, but often, you're there and you're so focused on the area and the piece of work you're doing that sometimes it's as well to close the doors of the workshop and think, you know what, I'm going to leave it for now. And when you go back to it, you think, yes, of course, if I move that to there and do that and move that, and it all falls into place. Yeah. Sometimes you can be too close to it and you can be too sort of in the zone and trying to make it work. And then you start making mistakes. Then you start, not shortcuts, but you know what I mean. You start trying to get something finished before it's ready to be finished.
Yeah, kind
every
of
piece that I make. Yes, every piece that I make, I think, has its own time scale of being finished, and it doesn't want to be finished until
it's finished. Yes, exactly. I think all artworks are like that, and some drag on for a long time.
But also, it's knowing when to say it's finished.
Yes, absolutely. And that can be difficult sometimes.
Oh, yes, it can.
Okay. What was the last piece you abandoned?
Well, there wasn't a case of abandon. There was a piece that I made. It was an early piece. And at the time, I mean, as artists, we all go through this sort of evolution, don't we, of our art. And that can be a spiritual inside the way that you're approaching it and the way you see yourself as an artist, or it can be a logistical component where you haven't found the components that you need because you didn't realize they existed. And that happened with me with my early pieces, is that I was just using the pipe fittings that I knew. I didn't have a need for anything else. And then I found ones that would do for joints, and that transformed what I do. So one of my early pieces that I was never 100% convinced was right was my Spider-Man piece. I did Spider-Man hanging upside down, that iconic scene from one of the Spider-Man movies where he comes down the drain pipe upside down and kisses Mary Jane. He's upside down like that. And I reproduced that in lamp foil. It was great, but there was something about it that wasn't quite right. And it was only because at that time I hadn't got the range of pipe fittings that I have today. So I showed it a couple of shows. It got a lot of plaudits for it, but I then stopped bringing it out because I wasn't that happy with it. So I did sort of abandon it. It was hanging in my workshop for about 2 years, gathering dust, hanging from the ceiling, and people would say, "Oh, it's Spider-Man behind you." I thought, "Oh God, don't ask me to talk about Spider-Man." But now I've got it down. Now I've taken him to bits of it. Now I'm redoing it. So by the early part of next year, I'll have redone it. And with my lamps, unlike people that paint or maybe your artwork, you can't just take it to bits. I can do that. I can take it to bits. And usually I have to take the whole thing to bits and start again, rather than try and take one arm off and put it back on. It's easier sometimes to say, okay, I'll take it. But the problem I've got is that I don't know what it is. I invest something thoughts into my lamp. I almost give them characters, give them life. So I always apologise when I'm taking them to bits. I apologise to the lamp itself. I'm sorry about this. I've got to take your arm off. I've got to remove your leg a moment. It won't hurt. Just bear with me. I think that's part of the enjoyment that I get, is that I'm trying to make my pieces quite lifelike in an odd way, because they are just pipe fittings until they're all together. And then they're not just pipe fittings. They are Jimi Hendrix, or they're Gandalf, or they're, in the case of the one I'm going to show you in a minute, I've got here is Katrina Johnson Thompson, the hurdler. That's what they become. And I think we've all got our own way about thinking about our art.
Absolutely.
And what it means to us. And I don't think there's a right or a wrong in that.
No, I don't think there is a right or wrong way either. But it sounds like you're actually being very intuitive and connecting with the spirit of your lamp.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? Weird. I would never have thought that would be something that would happen, but it seems to be doing that. Yeah. Especially with the musical lamps, with the musicians, because often musicians have got a stance about them. And Jimi Hendrix, you can see, where is he there?
Yes.
It's just, I was almost channeling my inner Hendrix when I made him.
Oh, yes.
And if I'm making a musician lamp, whether it be Bruce Springsteen, Jimmy Page, Jimi Hendrix, Slash, Angus Young from AC/DC, I would have that music on the radio while I'm making the lamp. And that is really, really interesting when you've got him playing. We've got Voodoo Child playing on the radio, and you're doing Jimi Hendrix in the pose he was on stage in the Summer of Love in '67, playing Voodoo Child, and you can hear it on the radio, and you've got the lamp imitating that. It's really quite spooky.
It sounds as if you're actually able to somehow embody that and actually channel, as you say, into the lamp.
People often say, "Oh, you've captured that pose," and I'm thinking to myself, well, only bloody pipe fittings. That's all it is. But I suppose, yeah, we're all a bit self-effacing sometimes, and a bit probably too modest, and you don't like. The problem with a lot of artists is that they don't know how to accept compliments. That is a problem, and I'm learning now to accept compliments, because I'm doing something different to other people, and it's giving me pleasure, and hopefully it's giving other people pleasure as well.
Absolutely. Does your process vary when you're creating something?
Only it varies it doesn't vary with the fittings that I'm using, because I make sure that I'm only using pipe fittings or lamp fittings like those joints I was telling you about. The process varies whether it's a lamp that I'm creating from my own personal choice, or it's a lamp that I'm creating for somebody else. If someone gives me a picture of their father playing cricket in the 1950s, then that takes on a whole different meaning to me, because there's some trust there given by the person that's commissioned it to say, this is my dad, he was very special to me, and I want you to do me a lamp of him playing cricket, the exact stance that he's got. So that is, the process does vary a bit there, because I have to imagine what they will think when they see the lamp, because it's not just a rock star they like or a sports person they like, it's their dad. And it's a real honor when I've got that sort of commission to do. So the actual logistical putting the lamp together, the fundamentals don't change, but my feeling, I think, about how the lamp is coming together changes, whether it's another guitarist, or whether it's a specific person who was dear to somebody else that's commissioned it. So that's the where it varies.
It varies. Could you give me another example of a different kind of how your process might change?
Another example. It changes if I'm doing animals. Now, the range of animals that I do are very different, because I've only ever done cats and dogs in lamp form. the problem is with for a lamp to work, if it's going to be an actual person that's recognizable, there has to be something about them, some quirky stance or something they're known for. Other times it just could be anybody holding a guitar. But if I didn't tell you that was Jimi Hendrix, you probably would guess it was Jimi Hendrix. When I'm doing the animals, it could be any dog that I'm doing. The dog I do is it's a sort of it's got 4 legs and a tail and a big muzzle that comes out. But what I vary then is I give people the option of varying the colours. If I can't make the animal look like their Dalmatian or their Fox Terrier or whatever, the process will vary, because I can say, okay, this is the dog that I do. What colour was your dog? You know, had it got brown front legs and a white back, and I can paint it. Painting works on the galvanized light fitters I use. There's some wonderful paints that I use that stick beautifully to the metalwork. And so that's when the process will vary, is I can then use color as a way of defining what the lamp is, rather than a stance or like a sort of guitar or type of guitar or whatever. So that's interesting as well when I'm asked to do an animal, a dog particularly.
It seems that you're somehow not able to connect this or embody the same way as you are with, say...
No, probably not, because you're limited with what you can do for the animal side of it, because to get the head right is a bit of a different process. So I find, if I'm honest, I enjoy working and doing people more than I do cats and dogs. Nobody's ever commissioned a dog because their dog's died and they want me to do a lamp of their dog. Dog lovers will buy my dog lamp, Sparks I call him, and they'll say, oh, can I have it in red setter color or black or white or just natural silver of the galvanization. So that's where there's not so much personal to them they just like dogs and they'd love to have a dog lamp or a cat lamp. The cat lamp I do is a black, very almost Egyptian, because I can make it look very sort of Egyptian, sitting up there, and cats have got a wonderful way of putting their front paws together like this, something slightly out like that. And the cat's one of the most difficult lamps that I've ever done.
Really?
I avoided doing a cat. I'm a cat lover. We love cats. I've avoided doing a cat because I didn't think that I could do justice to the pose of the cat, and I would follow our cats around looking how their back legs went under, because they have a great muscle system to put their legs underneath. And I managed in the end, when I found these little adjustable joints that you have on angle poised lamps that I could get the wiring through, that was when I was able to do the cat and do the cat justice. But it did end up looking very Egyptian, which is great, because cats have been a part of our history.
Absolutely, and particularly in Egypt.
Yeah.
Have you ever been stumped for ideas?
No, never been stumped for ideas. Never gone into the workshop and thinking, oh, I don't know what I'm going to do. On the other side of the coin, I've been foxed by ideas that I have that I just wouldn't have been able to put into, I've probably had too many ideas. A lot of them weren't logistically feasible that I couldn't do. But when I've sorted out the fanciful ones from the ones that I know I can do, I've always got something to do. And often it's a commission. And if I've got no commissions on the go, I will think, what lamp can I do that I haven't got? Because the pieces that I show at shows, although they're all for sale, they're really a sort of a shop window of, this is the sort of thing I can do. And often people will say, oh, I love your boxer there. You've got Muhammad Ali boxer there. Could you do me Tyson Fury in this particular pose, with his green Irish gloves on, whatever. So that's the sort of thing that I can that I use my lamps for. So I'm lucky in the fact that I can create things that I like as an example, and I try and do a broad spectrum of lamps, but I've never been stumped for an idea. I've always gone into my workshop, and if I hadn't got an idea when I went in, within 2 or 3 tracks on the radio, something's come up. It could be a lyric, it could be the actual person playing on the radio, it could be, it evokes a memory. And I think one of the lamps I did was called As You've Been So Good, which was a parent and child, the parent bending down, giving the child a lolly, little tiny lamp with a lolly. And that's my dad. He used to take me out down to the pub, and if I was very good on the way back, he'd give me a lolly, say, take it down to the pub. In those days, you did. You sat outside with a glass of orange squash and a packet of crisps, Smith's crisps with a little bag of salt in the bottom. We've all been there. Yeah.
Smith's crisps, this is salt packet. I used to like sprinkling the salt over the crisps, which was very nice. Have you ever needed to take a break from your art practice for a while?
Sometimes when my other business is too busy, I have to restrict my time. But unfortunately, now is the time that I've had to take a break because we're moving. And it is horrible. I'll tell you that, Matt. It is horrible. I haven't made anything. I haven't created anything physically. I've been doing a lot of design work on paper, but I haven't actually been there getting my hands dirty for, oh God, must be 2 months now, 3 months. Ooh. It's horrible. It's horrible. It's a horrible feeling. I could cry because the days when I just, I can't go to a workshop. It's still here, but it's empty, completely empty. There's nothing. Everything's in store at the moment. So it's an enforced sort of restriction at the moment, stopping doing it, but that will soon be replaced by a new workshop and new ideas.
Yeah, and as you say, you've been doing some drawings. So
I've been sort of working on. I know it seems that you know what you're doing with this new lamp, but I've got thought to, and also it's going to sound a bit odd. The colours are very important. I look at the Pantone references, so I will do George Harrison's blue there. I'll try and find out. You can actually use the internet to get the Pantone reference from the screen to find out, and then try and find a way of getting that blue as close to that blue as possible. So all those little design ideas are all a part of the process. I can still be doing that now, even though I'm not actually physically down in the workshop.
Yeah, that's the thing. You can be doing stuff, but it's not actually physically making. Which helps to sort of keep you sane when you're not in your workshop.
Yeah.
What would you say is the most difficult aspect? Excuse me. Mm-hmm. What's the most difficult aspect? I thought I turned that off. What's the most difficult aspect about creating a new piece for you?
The most difficult aspect is the movement, is getting the movement in each piece. And you would think because I've got movement in one piece, I'd know how to do. But of course, every piece is different. I can do 2 identical lamps. If someone said to me, can you do me 2 Jedi lamps with the Jedi warrior? Because the pieces that I'm dealing with, the fittings, are never going to be 100% exactly the same. The threads could be slightly more or less, so you get a different amount of turn on that particular thread. So the piece ends up being a slightly different angle, which is great. I don't mind that. No 2 lamps I've ever done will be the same, because there is a variation in the fittings that I'm using. But getting the right sort of movement can be just a millimetre or 2, believe it or not, of turning that piece around to think, yes, that's it. That's that bit of movement. That's that boxing, the punch coming across. And it could be different between that, and just turning. So that's the most difficult bit. It's a nice sort of difficulty to have, because when you solve that problem, it's brilliant. You just get a real sense of achievement. But the most difficult aspect will always be on the pieces that need movement. Not everyone does, not every piece I do needs, but most of them, I would say about 85% of the lamps that I produce need to have some sort of movement in to make them look a little bit more realistic.
Thank you. What is the most pleasurable thing about creating an artwork?
Oh, now then, that's twofold, really. The customer's reaction is always great, because I can think I've done a lovely piece and I reproduced that picture they sent me perfectly. I've encapsulated, captured the essence of the person in the lamp, in the photograph. But it's when I get if it's given them in person at a show, the look on their face, that's really pleasurable. Or the lovely email I get back afterwards. Yeah, that's a huge pleasure. And starting a new piece is equally as pleasurable. Because it's sometimes difficult to say goodbye to a piece if it's been one that's has been. Some of them are more meaningful to me than others. I haven't sold Jimi Hendrix yet. Where is he there? But when I do, I'll almost cry because I just love that piece. Yeah, some pieces mean more, but when they've gone and I start the next piece, that's the next enjoyment. That's the next piece that I'm enjoying the design. But I think overall is the reaction of the client when they receive the lamp, because they know that they're not going to get it anywhere else. There's nobody else in the world that will be able to produce that lamp in the same way as I've done, because as far as I know, I'm the only person that does that sort of thing, commissions of pipe lamps of characters.
And as you say, all your lamps are unique, which of course is another selling point, even if it's the same person, because of how the materials that you use, which is fantastic. What is your favorite piece you've ever made? Well,
I thought long and hard about this, and there are lots of pieces that I love, lots of favorites of mine, Jimi Hendrix, Gandalf there. But there was one piece that I made, excuse me, that I made because of my admiration for the person that it is of. And this person had struggled with adversity for years, trying to become the top in her sport. And it was Katrina Johnson-Thompson. So this is the lamp that I've got here that I will show you now. So this is her. Now this is actually specifically Katrina Johnson-Thompson hurdling in Doha in 2019, the meeting at which she won the World Championship. I'm going to get this right so that we can see it. The World Championship in the heptathlon. And you see what I mean about movement?
Yes.
Yeah. Hopefully, the difficult bit was obviously she's got to be attached to the base here. So I had to put this in, but hopefully it's not too in your face. Of course, she's touch sensor. So you can touch anywhere on her to get 3 levels of lighting.
Yeah.
So that is, this is my favorite piece that I've done, because it was made out of admiration, I think, for somebody and she'd been through a hell of a time in her career, injury and suffering with mental health as well, in trying, and she did it. So I thought I'm going to epitomize her in lamp form, and even down to the boots that she wears.
I can see those
Adidas. Yeah, that's the colours, the exact colours of the boots that she wore, the running shoes. So and little touches, like I got hold of a British Union flag to put on there, just as, and so, and the colouring as well, because she's a woman of colour. There's a company that I use called Culture Hustle, who do wonderful paints, and you can't really see it on Zoom, but this is gold. It's a black base paint, but it's got a gold tinge to it, so it's almost like a golden chocolatey colour, which is lovely. So whenever I'm doing lamps of people of colour, I use that paint, because it does really just makes it look beautiful. But that is the favorite one. I mean, that took a lot of design work. It took a lot of time to get it right. It took a lot of maybe a bit of swearing included to try and get it right.
Oh, is that included in your process?
Oh, yes, a little bit sometimes when you can't quite get something, but it was just being able to get the leading leg right and then get the following leg right as well. But in the end, once you've got it and you tightened up all the pieces, you sort of know that that's it, that's done, and that's right.
Fabulous.
And so that's an unusual piece. I know it seemed an odd thing to do, but it just shows people what is possible.
Absolutely. And could you sell it?
Oh, yes, I would sell it. Yeah, I mean, if somebody wanted to buy it, a lot of people have been interested. But obviously, my lamps are a considered purchase because there's a lot of effort and time into them. So it's not something you would buy on a whim. You would buy this as a special lamp for somebody who maybe had a career in hurdling, or maybe was just getting into it and really doing well, or as a prize for a competition. That's a lot of my lamps can be used for that as award ceremonies. So I can do them bespoke for award ceremonies. So
that would be fabulous as an award.
A bit different to your normal cup or your brass plaque or your glass decanter, whatever you win, to have a lamp. And I can I haven't got it on here, but I can also put a brass plaque on there.
Yeah.
Which can carry name of whoever on there. So it's the personalization that I think is something that is a good USP for me, is the fact that I can make it of somebody that they recognize, but also with the brass plaque, it's sort of almost a timestamp on there. This is so and so hurdling in Doha, whatever, or it could be someone's daughter, gymnastics, doing their first gymnastic routine, and they've got a picture of her doing a round off or something. And can I do that? Yes, I could reproduce that in the coloured leotard that they've got. And so it's a bit different to what you would get in the lighting department at John Lewis.
Absolutely. And it sounds wonderful to mark these special moments in people's lives, whether they're Olympians or school champion.
Well, that's still a form of Olympian, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Absolutely.
Speaking as a school champion myself.
Yes. I was never a school champion, but maths. School champion at maths, but that's about it.
Oh, that's good. Well, I wasn't a school champion at maths, but hey, we're all different.
Yeah.
What was the first piece of artwork that you created?
Well, the problem I've got with this is that I didn't call myself an artist until we went into lockdown. This is the weird thing. I was just crafting. And the first, I started off doing this when Steph, who's been doing things for a lot longer than I have, she was doing her needle felting and was exhibiting at small local events and needed some lighting to light up the stand. So I did some book lamps, drilled out some books and put some old style books, and then I did a couple of bottle lamps, very simple things. And lo and behold, at the end of the show, somebody wanted to buy them, which was amazing. So my first creations were book lamps and bottle lamps. I didn't create my first piece of what I would call art until lockdown, when it was when the Bloomz, really, when Steph joined the Bloomz and was told that she should call herself an artist, really, because that's what she was. And then she said to me, "You need to call yourself an artist." Well, I said, "I'm not an artist. I don't paint." Because in my mind, as with a lot of people, the word artist refers to painting, maybe, possibly sculpting. But, that's my view. But of course it doesn't, does it? It covers a wide remit of different. If you're making something creative and you enjoy it and you're putting it out there for people to buy, you're an artist. It doesn't matter how good you are. It's not about being good. No. It's about creating something. And so when I start calling myself an artist, it didn't feel right to start with, as it doesn't with a lot of people. But I soon got over that. Soon got over myself on that.
Good. So when you were crafting and then when you began to own being an artist, what would you say was the difference in your thinking or mindset or how you created?
The difference was in belief, really. But once I started calling myself an artist, there was some sort of more belief in what I could do, because in my mind I'd got some validation, even if it was only validation for myself, that I was an artist. And then once that big, I mean, it meant nothing from the point of view that one day I wasn't an artist, next day I was an artist, exactly the same. But all of a sudden I got the belief that I could do more. I could take this further. And I didn't want to sort of leave it the same. I think you've got to evolve, even if that evolution is slowly. It doesn't matter. If you're always striving to do a little bit better and to try something new, even if that doesn't always work. And I think so. It was the belief that I could do a bit more and take it further, which I did. You know, I started to put more time into it, more effort into it. But so I think belief was the thing. And we all have that moments of imposter syndrome. I know it's a sort of cliche almost, but we do go through that some days when you look at other people's fantastic art, you think, oh my God, what do they think of mine? But then you shouldn't think that, because, you know, everybody's different. What they create is different, and will have an audience or won't have an audience. Some people look at my lamps at shows and just don't get it. They don't get the fact that why would you put pipes together as a person? You know, and that's fine. You know, I don't mind that at all. It wouldn't do if we all felt exactly the same about things around us. So that's, no. But it's nice that then open up a vein of conversation about it. And some people that have looked at my lamps and can't quite see what they are, you know, and you know, well, that's obviously it looks like a dog, but not to everybody, maybe.
No.
So it's I love to talk to people at shows about, even if they don't if they don't look as though they that interested. Those are the people I like to talk to.
Yes.
Because, you know, by the time you finish speaking to them, they've gone away with a slightly different mindset.
Absolutely.
I don't think I could do that if I hadn't called myself an artist.
Fabulous. And I love to do that too. So when you tell me a little bit more about how you felt when you finally embodied, can you remember that point when you finally embodied that you were an artist?
Yeah, I say belief was the first thing. And the next thing, it almost opened up a different arena for me of other people that I felt that I could legitimately talk to and discuss things with on a level playing field. So almost like there was a sort of a peer validation of how I felt then. So there's a fine line between confidence and arrogance, very fine line. And you've got to tread that line very carefully. So I'm always careful that I'm confident as an artist. I'm confident in what I do. I don't mind saying that I produce good lamps, great lamps, which are of high quality. But I might not be the best in the world, but you know, you need to have that confidence in yourself and your ability. You need to also know your failings as well. You need to know what you need to do to grow as an artist. And these are all the feelings that came to me when I became an artist and not just a crafter, is that you start, because you know that this is almost a new career for you, you then start to think about the sort of, how can I validate myself on this? What do I need to do? What's my mindset going to have to be going forward as an artist? And I'm sure some people shy away from that, because when you call yourself an artist, you can't go back and say, I'm no longer an artist. Once you've done it, that's it. And so I think once you've taken that step in calling yourself an artist, you then need to validate it within and know that your strengths, accept that you're going to have some weaknesses and address them as they come along. Be able to take criticism, because as a crafter, you're probably not going to get a lot of criticism. You're just doing a bit of crafting. But as an artist, some people are going to criticize you. Maybe they don't like your work. And you should be able to take that on the chin. And also be accepting of the fact that, say, you're not everybody's cup of tea. But I certainly wouldn't go back. Certainly wouldn't go back to just doing crafting now, you know.
That warms my heart, Steve. I'm so pleased, because I remember speaking to you before about this, and you were on that kind of, I'm not sure. So I'm really, that warms my heart for you to say that. Now, you said in order for you to grow, there's certain things you need to do. So in order you to grow further than where you are now, what do you feel that you need to
grow further? Well, from a pure business point of view,
from an artistic point of view.
From an artistic point of view, from an artistic point of view, I think that I need to explore maybe other lamps that I can make, still using pipe fittings and still characters, but maybe push myself a bit more in. And that's where I think a lot of artists may struggle, because I know that if I push myself to do some different pieces that I can't instantly see how they would work, they might not work and they might fail. And that might give me the feeling of failure. But that's the thing I've got to overcome. So I think that's my next step is normally when I think of a lamp, within a few seconds in my head, I know it's going to work, because it's a safe zone. I know that I can produce any number of guitarists in different poses, or boxers, or sports people. That's pretty well a done deal. But then I might think, well, what can I do? What can I have a go at that I'm not sure whether it's going to work? I don't know what we're thinking here, Matt, but that's what I need to be doing. And maybe that's why I've got the next 2 or 3 months without a workshop, is to start to think, okay, what can I do? What can I think to do that I'm sort of almost walking the plank on, and don't know if I'm going to go off the end or if someone's going to put another plank there for me to carry on walking. So that's what I might have to do, is to try something where I'm not sure that it's going to work. And it's almost outside the comfort zone is the whole comfort zone thing. Because my comfort zone has got bigger and bigger and bigger. 3 years ago, I wouldn't have thought of making anything like this 3 years ago. Not a chance. My comfort zone was doing some small lamps that, as long as they lit up, that was fine. But then it's grown, the comfort zone's grown and grown. And I'm at the place now where I think if I push it any further, I'm going to be out of it. And that's where I've got to go, really. I think as artists, we have to push the boundaries a bit. And
absolutely, and take the risk of failing and being okay with that.
But it's not a failure, really, is it?
No, it isn't, because it's about experimenting, and through those things that don't work, you actually find other things
that work
in the process, which are surprising, and it can take you in a totally different
exactly. And so that's what I want to try and do, is to try things out that aren't within my comfort zone. If they don't work, as you said, there'll be something you've done on the way that you know, I could use that in another project maybe, and you note them down and maybe use them later on. So yeah,
absolutely, I totally agree with you. Now, would you like to tell the viewers anything else about your creative process that we haven't touched on here?
We touched on most things, but I think obviously commissions is what I love doing more than anything else. I love doing commission work. I love looking at people's ideas for a lamp. So maybe somebody will have an idea, but it's not a formed idea. It's not completely gelled. So I can actually work with you to get that idea into something, that concept into something more rigid. So that's something that I can do as well. As I said at the start, I love to think about lighting as being a part of your home and different areas should have different lighting according to the uses. And just because I'm producing fun character lamps, it doesn't mean that they can't be a part of that special environment for you. So my creative process isn't just making a pipe lamp to light up a part of your house. It's making a unique piece of art that is personal to you, that will give you the right lighting and make you feel the way that lamp should make you feel. And that is a big part of the creative process, which that's what I want to get across to people. It's not just a lamp to turn on and it lights up the room. It's a lamp to make you think. It's a lamp to stimulate you, maybe evoke memories. The warm glow might relax you. It's a big part of your life. Lighting is a big part of our life. We take it so much for granted. I'm sat here now, I've got a couple of lights on, but the main source of light is so many billion miles away, the sun. So we've got to sort of have our environments at home where we recreate that unique lighting environment that's pleasing for us. And that's what I can help with.
Thank you so much. It's been wonderful talking to you about your creative process.
Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. I don't think I've gone into so much depth with anybody in the interview before about all the different parts of the creating of my lamps. It's been great for me because it's made me think about things as well. So I'll gain as much from this interview as you and your listeners and might as well. So
yeah, again, thank you so much. And hopefully at some point we'll manage to get this on Facebook. The Bloomz.
Oh yes, I'm sure we will. I'm sure we will.
Somehow. Okay, again, thank you so much.
That's okay, Matt. Take care. Thank you again for having me. Really appreciate it. Bye now.